Welcome to the November gathering. This time I trust we are live. All right, let's start right into the feeling exercise for this month. This is about landing. This is Earth, and we're starting a few minutes late here because it seems that it's the wrong live cast that just got started at 8 p.m. sharp. The setup for the German live cast began with the first 8 minutes or so of this one. So let's start again, and it's a welcome opportunity to practice landing because it's just one of those situations where you need it. So wherever you are, whether you're sitting, standing, or lying down, feel the support that you're standing, sitting, or lying on. If you're standing, feel the soles of your feet on the ground. If you're sitting on a chair and also have your feet on the ground, feel the soles of your feet on the ground. If you're lying down, feel the back side of your body, or whichever part of your body is contacting the support you're resting on. And of course, if you are sitting, be it cross-legged like I am right now, or on a chair, feel the contact of whatever parts of your body are placed on the chair, on the sofa, on the cushion, on the support. And then use each conscious exhalation to land a little more. Use each conscious exhalation in such a way that it gently seems to push you down ever so slightly, adding just a gram or two, just a fraction of an ounce, almost no weight at all, but so that you can feel, this is bringing the soles of my feet a little more intimately to the floor and having them spread out a little more over the floor. Or this is bringing my base a little more closely, a little more intimately to the chair, cushion, etc. And as it does so, my base takes up a little more space than it did before, spreading gently into its natural expansion. And with each new exhalation, as you add this kind of no weight weight, as you add a sense of landing more completely and more widely on the support that carries you, start feeling the difference between weightedness, that is, having your natural weight, and heaviness, which is feeling an unnatural amount of weight resting on you or burdening you. You will soon find that this conscious practice, which uses only your sensory awareness, actually makes you feel, in one sense, lighter and lighter, while at the same time allowing you to feel ever more clearly present, ever more fully present in your body now, in the moment now. And if you are finding it difficult to get that sense of being more and more clearly present in your body, let me add in a little tool I included in one of the feeling exercises for this month's episode. Allow each out-breath, each exhalation as it comes down from head to toes to blow like a wind inside your body and then through the outer membranes of your body, as though it were going through the contours of your body, and the contours of your body, as though made of very fine cloth, retain with each out-breath some fine, delicate golden dust. I called it stardust in the exercise. If you look at the symbol, don't have to do it now. If you're sitting there with your eyes closed, you can do it later as you watch again. But the graphic artists chose for this month's, made for this month's episode, that yellow, solid, is it a rock, is it a crystal type shape that may help you with a sense of, is it fine sand, is it fine gold, is at stardust something that's held back by the contours of your body as though they were made of fine cloth. And that will help you feel the body as it's seated there more fully and more completely. And little by little, as you keep landing into this, anything else that may have also been there drops into the background. And all there is, all you can feel is this moment now, and you sitting in your body now, in this experience now. Sometimes this sort of landing in the immediate present, landing in your body as it is right now, landing in this moment, makes time disappear from your experience. And then there is no time that passes, there's a timeless moment, and a moment of boundlessness that I referred to in the announcement for this gathering tonight. And sometimes you just can't quite get there. So the key is not to worry about it, because depending on what you need in the moment, but also depending on what the moment requires, there simply are moments where the very best we can do is not be blown away. Not be blown away by our thoughts, not be blown away by our emotions, not be blown away by our desire to be anywhere but here. And then that is the gold already. Then that's the most we can hope for. But when it's not one of those moments where we need the coming down and the exhale and the breathing into the expansion of our bodies, simply not to be blown away or torn away, when we can actually manage to fully land here rather quickly, then because time disappears, we feel unbound in where our attention could go next. We feel that each now, each timeless now is full of playfulness and playful possibilities. So return to this exercise at different times. Always, of course, at those times when you need what I just described a little bit ago, that landing so as not to be blown away. This is a stormy moment in world affairs, and therefore in humankind's internal, emotional and mental affairs, but do return to it as well for those sweet moments of timelessness. Those of you who practice Jin-Shin-Jyutsu and others will know this from those delightful moments that we invariably do have now and then as we work with clients. There are these moments where we just simply can't really say whether 10 seconds have passed or 15 minutes. I was pausing here and saying can't really, because in a way we can and in a way we can't. You know, most of the time we retain a sense of more or less the time that has passed, and yet that moment of having exited chronological time and having entered a space or a moment of timelessness, this is also something that our clients then come back to us with. They do know the session lasted a little less than an hour, and yet they feel as though weeks had gone by since they landed on that table. So it's that playfulness that first depth can bring you to, can guide you to, and often it's, to our mind, it seems the opposite of what earth, what a rock, what this solid seeming thing that is depicted here would have us get in contact with. So you are here as solidly as a rock and as proudly as a rock and as clearly as a rock, and it is in that you find both an anchor and a weightless, timeless playfulness. Work with it, be with it, play with it, and enjoy whatever experience comes. So there's the feeling exercise for this evening, and with that I'll shortly get into the input and the questions that I received for this evening, but let me first say a few words about the upcoming online retreat, Senses, Fingers, online retreat, December 10th to the 17th. You will find the announcement of this on Facebook starting tomorrow. You have received an email informing you about it if you are on my mailing list, and if you're not, make sure to sign up at the end of this livecast. The link will be posted at the end of the livecast. This 7-day, 8-day actually retreat, it runs Sunday through Sunday from the 10th to the 17th. We start in the evening, Hamburg time that is, on the 10th, and we end in the morning, again Hamburg time, on the 17th. And in the days between the Monday through Saturday, we have a morning and an afternoon or evening meditation each day. And the morning meditations on those 6 days will work with our senses. So yeah, that's the 5 physical senses plus what Buddhists consider the 6th sense, thinking. And what we will do in each of those half-hour meditations in the morning is simply activate one of our senses while keeping it free of sense objects. That may sound mysterious to you, but I can assure you it is a practice that brings you to your senses, as one says in English, and it's extremely liberating and invigorating. And we'll keep that to a half hour. The retreat, as in earlier years, will be in German, English and French. So it'll be trilingual, and participants throughout the years have said how soothing and useful they found it to hear those very calm and simple instructions given in at least one language they understand, and then the same, at least vibration, in a language they don't need to understand, to find it reinforcing. The other 8 meditations, so there are 6 half-hour ones on the senses, and the other 8 meditations will be centered around holding just one finger or holding the palm of the hand on those various days. And I'll be very, very specific about how to listen into the finger at any given time. So those will be 8 1-hour meditations. Chances are on the first day we'll go over a little bit, and participation is free. You pay what you want, and if you're not sure at the moment of signing up just how much, if anything, you want to give, you can enter 0 and just sign up, and you can always send a donation later if you choose to do so. More information on that in upcoming newsletters, so do make sure to sign up for them if you don't receive my newsletter just yet. And with that, I come to questions and feedback. There's one left over from last month. Michal wrote after the Q&A last month that he hadn't been able to make it to that one, and submitted a question that I'll be very happy to go into today. During the Pulse Listening Weeks, Michal is referring back to the 7-month Reimagining Pulse Listening course. We were practicing listening to the transformation of energies through the pulse textures. I don't know if it's just a habit or what, but I find that very soothing. So, although I've been intrigued by the 3 breaths, resting and awareness practice, I'm finding I want to wait longer than 3 breaths. Perhaps this has to do with old habits, perhaps with the time it sometimes takes to settle into a harmonious rhythm, especially right now when there's so much going on in the world that can easily trigger one. But I found it very challenging to stick to 3 breaths. Okay, so what Michal is referring to here is one very specific exercise that I gave that has to do with activating sensory perception immediately. So in, I believe it was the introductory chapter to The Life We Miss, the chapter called Aliveness that premiered in October, so last month, that I invited participants to stay for 3 conscious breaths on each step of the main central and then move on. I do think I explained in the context of the exercise that that was not with a sense of this is how it must be done, but as a way of practicing being in perception right away. Our minds tend to play this dirty trick on us that comes disguised as the question, what am I supposed to feel? And these words don't go together in the same sentence. You can't be supposed to feel. You can be supposed to do something, supposed to understand something, supposed to produce something, but feeling is outside the realm of something you can be expected to do. You can make yourself do. The nature of feeling as I mean it, purely in the sense of the word, is I place my hand somewhere and I can't be supposed to feel anything. The sensing happens, and what my hand feels. So it's, of course, extremely valid and valuable to stay with any step that you do, in any flow that you do, and stay there until you feel a transformation happening. Yeah, and the relaxing into the duration that suits you can indeed be very, very relaxing and useful, and it tends to be what we do when we practice on others. However, there is great benefit to realizing that if I am immediately landed, if I have immediately landed at my fingertips, my sensory awareness is immediately there. Even if I stayed for as little as 1 conscious breath, there wouldn't be a sense of rush as I move on to the next step. And if you observe yourself keenly, where the sense of rush, of being hurried, comes in is when the mind tries to make sense of what it is you're feeling. So, oh, I haven't had time to name this yet. That's possible. And it's legitimate to want to get a sense of what it is that I'm feeling, but my hand is feeling what it's feeling. And anytime my sensory awareness is at the fingertips, the moment I get there, I can then move on consciously. I can be conscious of the fact that, oh, I could have stayed. If you do stay for 20 minutes, it's still true that you could have stayed longer and more interesting stuff would have happened. Doesn't mean that the time you move on is entirely arbitrary, but the treasure of staying longer is you get a sense of completeness that has you move on. The treasure of staying only very, very briefly, if you do it in the way I described, is that it has you practice having sensory awareness be present right away, and having sensory awareness, rather than evaluation deduced from sensory perception, be key. So I perceive, I stay in perception. That's what allows me to feel I'm still in perception, but someplace else. And no rush. I have now arrived at the next step. No rush. I am now already in the next place. And it is again that timelessness I referred to earlier in the feeling exercise that makes it that there isn't a sensation of rushing through anything. So, yeah, that makes sense. Huh? Always bear in mind when I offer new tools that we don't necessarily use commonly or all the time, it is for you to try something new. It's never to say that's how it must be done. All right. Taj writes, hello Matthias, I am so engaged with the feeling exercises this month that I have no questions. So I'll just share 3 of my experiences. 1, being present. A major change for me as I've leaned into the practices this month is a redefinition of the term present. As in, we should be present. Trying to do that as a concept, my mental manipulation was to focus on the details of the environment to focus on the details of the environment with the result of leaving me out of the picture. With the stardust in line of the feeling exercise, the one I included earlier today as well, all that shifted, or rather, all that has shifted or rather become inclusive of being present to me and with my body. Present to and with my body. Its outlying home of my sensory inputs, and where I sense landedness and the boundaries of meeting. As I write this, there was a big sigh, and I'm reminded of the title of this course, The Life We Miss. See, The Life We Miss, for those who might not know that, is a title that I very deliberately chose because my claim is that the fundamental qualities of being that we call the depths are something that is deeply inscribed in our body's memory, in our being's memory, through the millions of years of evolution. There are certain things that are so fundamental to being in a body, to being in the world, and to being in a social context, in a world with other people, that is, that we know them. We know them from age-old, ancient programming. We know them even if they haven't been very present in this particular life due to, say, difficult circumstances or lacking circumstances. And yet, when something so fundamental as feeling you have ground to stand on, or you're available to yourself, is experienced, something deep inside recognizes, yes, that's the way it's supposed to feel. That's the way life is supposed to feel. And anything less than that feels lacking, or rather that memory of landing, feeling the contours of my body and my being, and within those confines and contours feeling so free. When I'm not feeling that, I miss it. That's why the course is called The Life We Miss. So we slowly but surely, and sometimes not so slowly, exit the notion that this depth fixes that, and this depth fixes that, and that depth fixes that. Right. 2. Touchstone memory updated. I remember being with my dying friend in the hospital. I had just given him a back rub. He was very appreciative and reached to hold my hand as he went to sleep. I sat for over an hour, not moving, just reveling in the weight of his hand over mine and the unspoken connection we had. This month, I've taken that memory and, using the exercise from chapter 1, aligned with the essence of touch beneath the details of the who and when of my memory. I recognize from your teaching videos this month the quality of weightedness, of here I am, there you are, of feeling safe, secure, welcomed. Even as I write this, I feel the delicious pull of being settled in first depth as a knowing, not as a conceptual understanding. Stardust from the inside, tears come. Thank you for sharing that. Number 3, foundational contributions of chapter 1. So chapter 1 is the one about aliveness, the October chapter, right? I have found it useful to be with a bonus feeling exercise in chapter 1, the one about thinking, to observe from a distance the commenting and imagining as I worked with the first depth feeling exercise of chapter 2, Earth, settling more simply into the experience of skin surface and skin surface meeting my environment. Sweet. Appreciating the dedication and integrity with which you share the JSJ art form you have created, Taj. Thank you, Taj. The fact that I mentioned a little earlier when I spoke about the 8-day online retreat, that in Buddhism, thinking rather than being confused with consciousness, much Western thinking thinks of the 5 senses as, sense perceptions as what appears to consciousness. And consciousness, for many Westerners, is the mind. Whereas the mind and mental processes and thinking in general, to Buddhist observation, are not consciousness, not awareness. They are just something that also arises in consciousness. Thinking, consciousness or awareness rather is aware that thinking is happening, like it can be aware that touch is happening, that smell, that taste, that hearing, that seeing is happening. As a concept, that doesn't really do much, but as an experience, it really makes a huge difference. To feel the difference between thinking and awareness, to experience that. As I said, we'll go into that during one of the meditations in the retreat. The otherwise silent, mostly silent, online retreat. Thank you for that input and feedback, Taj. And Ivor writes, I hope I pronounced that correctly, I remember from a few months back you coached me in an email on more or less how to pronounce that. And Ivor writes, another pure Jiromarai question. He's referring to what, to a question I had last month, where I believe it was Taj, but somebody asked, what's pure Jiromarai? And I commented with some humor, I believe, last month on that very Western, well, maybe it's not just Western, but with that do I want to call it an obsession with purity? But anyway, that research for what's the real thing, what's that? Now, of course, if you're asking what is the genuine source material, that makes sense. So that is a preamble to reading and then answering the question. Hi Matthias, I'm also interested in the differences and evolution of the teaching. I was debating whether or when to ask this question, but it certainly follows these lines. I was reading Véronique Lenormand's The Square Light of the Moon. Véronique Lenormand is a French author, by the way, who wrote a book called La Lumière Carrée de la Lune, translated accurately into English as The Square Light of the Moon, which is taken from a haiku that she quotes. A recent autobiography about a Jinshinjutsu journey, very interesting book with some quotes on depths by you, Matthias. Yes, I've known Véronique for many years. She's been a student of Jinshinjutsu for many years. Those of you who speak Italian, Square Light of the Moon has just come out in Italian. La luce quadrata della luna. Such a beautiful title in Italian. It's the same, just translated. And Véronique, who is a fan of Japanese cinema and knows it quite well and keeps bringing examples of Japanese cinema and quotes of Japanese haiku poetry, talks about a trip she took to Japan to try and find traces of Juromurai, people who might have known Juromurai, places where he lived, and maybe some of what he really was like and what he really taught, and finds very little, if anything, in Japan, but gives us non-Japanese people an insight into many an aspect of Japanese culture, always described by her as a French journalist and writer and person and practitioner, traveling with a close friend who is Japanese but lives in France, and the two of them are not lost to translation but engaged in this process of translating and searching. And what I find precious about that book is how little they find, and how in realizing that they find so little of what they are searching for in terms of tangible evidence, real stories and places, they perhaps, or she perhaps, gets in touch a little more essentially with what Jinshinjutsu as an art that's already part of us, and we need to travel nowhere to find that, is. But back to the question that I was putting to us, or to me, which presents a diagram. So the book presents a diagram of the safety energy locks, or rather Ki 10, that's the Japanese word, which literally translates as energy points. It's Mary Burmeister who called them energy locks and then safety energy locks. But the Japanese term Ki 10 means energy point. Copied from a Juromurai drawing. I was fascinated to see the 20s more on the top of the head rather than the forehead. Well, if any of you have seen those Juromurai drawings, they are very intriguing by how alive they are and by how anatomically imprecise they are. They take great liberty with the human body, especially when it comes to the limbs, which are often shown in a way that you could never have a person, even a very limber person, turn towards you. You know, you see in the same two-dimensional illustration the front of the leg and the outside of the leg, which is impossible, and sometimes even the back of the leg. It's just, these are illustrations that take great liberty with the human body because they just want to make a point, and they do. So the drawings of the head are particularly imprecise often, and yes, sometimes it looks like 20 is up here. And the key information on safety energy locks, you must remember, is that they are the size of your palm of hand plus thumb. They're a circle this big around, right? It's not simply to say that, oh, never mind, if this is where the energy lock is and you don't know it, and your hand is placed somewhere in this circle, the energy will still get to the center. There's that bit of information, but it truly means that they do travel, they travel. And this is what I teach in my foundational training all the time. Rather than relying on a book to postulate where an energy lock is, use the living book that you have with you all the time. Use your body and find where is it now, and use, a sentient contact with the body of your client and find the 20 in the now. It's not surprising that in different sets of illustrations that Jill Marai made over the decades, you will find the energy locks in slightly different locations. When we made the workbooks for my foundational training, Madeline and I had this conversation about not using dots, about using brush strokes to indicate the location of the energy locks that were vague enough that you couldn't mistake them for points if you wanted to. So they're not vague locations, it's just that they're brush strokes, they're clearly not dots. And I actually explained it in the text that that's what we did and why it is that we did that. Ivor continues, it was quite timely as I was dealing with a very serious eye project that spring. To me, the top of head seems much more lively and useful. Now, see, this is the point, Ivor and everyone else. Always, be curious about which version of the safety energy locks feels lively and useful. Lively and useful. Lively and useful are such useful criteria. Lively and useful. That is how your body tells you, this is what it is, where it is, what I can use today. Energy locks truly are very, 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 very different from acupuncture points in that way. There are so many acupuncture points that within the area of almost any safety energy locks, you have a multitude of acupuncture points. And I can't speak to those because I know nothing about acupuncture, but energy locks, as Mary clearly says, are appropriately located on the body trying to remember the exact wording in the English original of Self-Help Book 2. Something along the lines of, so if you pick up your Self-Help Book 2 by Mary Burmeister, you look to the page where she asks mankind's safety energy locks and keys, where are they? You will find the answer to that question being each safety energy lock is appropriately located on the body, not depending on, not in relationship to, but something along those lines. Its specific meaning and responsibility. Yeah? So 20 is called everlasting, eternal, eternity. It has to do with remembering beyond the limits of time, and it is appropriately located in the body because of that meaning. So if you feel, without touching, as I just did, if you feel from within, take your sensory awareness to the forehead area. You place your sensory awareness in the region of your forehead. You feel that area from within and observe what happens to the way you feel, and observe what happens to your body. You will feel something opening up here. You will feel it has an upward direction and it engulfs the general region. That's what a safety energy lock is. It's the general region here, and what the bullseye of that general region is at any given time, only the body can tell you. The body as you sense into it with your own sensory awareness, or the body as you feel into it with your sense of touch in your jumper cable hand. So that's the deeper understanding of what a safety energy lock is and what makes it so special. And so as you continue here, you say, I recall Iona Teagarden, who created the unfortunately named Jinshin-Do acupressure modality, had alleged years ago that Mary got some of the points wrong. Well, yeah, I mean, what can I say? You know, I just explained what, in my understanding, a safety energy lock is. And Iona Teagarden, you know, God bless her work, which scores of, I mean, large numbers of people have learned and enjoyed, etc., etc. It's sort of fallen by the wayside, I believe. It's been improved upon, etc. But the story of Iona Teagarden is she went, after she had studied some with Mary, to Japan and presented herself to Haruki Kato, telling him she was Mary's most advanced student, and Kato was horrified by how little she understood, and in fact it made him think, this is Kato telling us the story years ago, that for a while he thought, oh, if this is her most advanced student, then Mary Burmeister must not understand Jiu-Jitsu very well. And so there was sort of a frosty period there between the two of them because of that. Mary didn't understand why, well, I mean, there was that misunderstanding when Iona Teagarden published her book, calling it Jinshin Jitsu, and saying this was the sum of what she had learned from Mary Burmeister and Haruki Kato. Mary, for a moment, was shocked upon reading the nonsense she found in the book, wondering whether Kato could seriously have told her that much nonsense, while Kato was wondering the same. They finally both asked Iona Teagarden to take their names out of the book, like, publish whatever you want, but do not claim that what's in this book comes from either of us, you know. So that's how substantial they, both of them, considered the misunderstandings to be in Iona Teagarden's work, right? So, last year I was able to purchase Haruki Kato's texts. Scottsdale had a Black Friday sale, and somehow temporarily it no longer said you had to be a Kato seminar student. What a long-time dream come true. In it, I found the original of the Lenormand drawing showing the great original key flow through all the points. There's another Jeremiah drawing showing key 1020 is labeled dent in the front of the head. See, dent in the front of the head, I mean, where do human foreheads have dents? Some do, some don't, some have them in different places. But that notion of dent actually does make sense, because one of the ways you can sometimes find the keyholes, so to speak, to the locks is by letting your hand gently and with an earthy touch find the dent or the dip, the sometimes clearly physical, sometimes more subtly energetic keyhole that your finger can fall into in the moment. And it won't always be in the same place, but when you practice, and this is what I teach systematically in my foundational training, when you practice the sensation of, oh, now I've fallen into it. I've not just landed on it, so the book says, but now I feel I've plunged into, sometimes stumbled into, the energy lock's current moment keyhole. That is so liberating when you understand that you just have to ask the body. There's no relying on books and images for that. And it is not only not surprising, it is deeply appropriate that these illustrations vary from one another. So enjoy working with that new understanding. And surprisingly, 25 is described as, I will add here, changing Ivar's text a little bit, in the middle of the vertical muscle on outside thigh. Now, outside, I don't know whether there may be a translation error here, because the outside of the body in medical terminology is called lateral, and the back side of the body is also referred to as lateral. Medial is anything from front to inside, and lateral anything from outside to backside, anatomically speaking. So if we say it's in the middle of the vertical muscle on the lateral side of the thigh, then the contradiction immediately dissolves. There's some other minor differences, but all within a palm's breadth. I don't mean to put you on the spot. It was all a bit disconcerting, but I like having the alternative points to try. Well, yeah, because that's where the juice lies. Now, 25 on the outside of the thigh. I was sent another email later saying, the illustration actually does have it in the familiar place at the tip of the sit bone of the ischium. But, you know, try it out. Try it out. Go into it with your sensory awareness and play with it. And sometimes coming around from that very posterior place does make sense, but most of the time you will find that 25 is appropriately located in the body under the buttocks, because that's where the quiet but lively regeneration that making us move again in body, mind and spirit actually lives, where it can be felt in your body. I'll let you play with those two feeling exercises, the one for the 20 and this one now for the 25. And with that, I thank you all for being here tonight and wish you a lovely evening, and we'll leave you with this chart so that you can, if you haven't already, sign up for the newsletter, check out my website and get more information about the online retreat that I mentioned earlier in the livecast. And with that, have a great evening. I will see members on camera live next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on Zoom. You will find the info in the membership area. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in December.